So welcome to the Navigate Your Salesforce Career session. My name is Mike Gerholt. I think I have the second best title at Salesforce, called Director of Admin Evangelism. I say it's the second best next to CEO, and you can pick which one. We have many. I know at the end of every breakout session, there's a lot of slides and people tell you stuff to do and things you can do next. I thought I'd stick it at the front. That way, if I run long, which I promise I won't, you have where I'd like you to go. So bit.ly/DF18 capital N for navigate. That bit.ly should work. That takes you to a trail mix that I created for this session, which helps you walk through learning about how to use Trailhead, has some career guidance modules in there, and also has other just kind of non-Salesforce modules in it. So, of course, before we get started, the forward-looking statements, just a reminder that Salesforce is a publicly traded company. Please make all your purchasing decisions based on current features and functionality. Thankfully, I'm not demoing any, so it's going to be awesome, but that's okay. And then to start, so lady in the front row, this is her last day at Dreamforce. It's all got to come to an end at some point. And I know this is a giant room, so everybody from the pillar on back, you'll hear me tomorrow when she's flying home. It's a Lewis Black joke. A lot of Lewis Black fans. But I want to thank you for taking time out. There is 2,700 sessions here at Dreamforce. I had the privilege this year of running both the admin and developer track. I know there's a lot of great content. I know there's a lot of very technical content, a lot of hands-on content. So I want to thank you for taking time to come and sit in this session today. I hope other speakers and other presenters in our tracks do the very same thing, because I really feel like you sitting here today, even though you might be a little tired, I've sat in sessions like that before, I want you to know you're reinvesting in yourself. And that, to me, is one of the most important things you can do at a conference, is really take time for yourself, take time for your career, take time for where you're going. So, thank you. All right. I think every good presentation starts out with a good story. So I'm going to start mine with a story. This time last year, I had the privilege of taking the admin evangelism team, which is myself, Jillian Bruce, who you might have heard on the podcast, Leanne Reimel, who does a lot of our demos, and Mark Baseman, who's presenting across the hall. We didn't schedule this one very well, to South by Southwest. And South by Southwest is a very interactive, very fun music, film, and interactive festival. And we did a lot of learning there. We got to see a lot of people present. We got to see a lot of interesting topics. I was fortunate enough that one of my evangelists, Leanne Reimel, said, hey, we need to go to the Nat Geo building, because everything's a building, and we have to see this session. And this session is with Ron Howard, who you can see, and a very famous scientist. Anybody want to take a guess? Neil deGrasse Tyson, exactly. And I did the math in my head, which was very quick. This is probably the only time in my life I'm going to get to see these two amazing people in the same room. So we got there early, a couple hours early, and we still got a balcony seat, which is why it's facing down. And we stood there waiting for the session. And of course, before the session, they had a lot of people from Nat Geo on the stage talking about different things. And the presenter right before this, you can see the screens are white. There's some people walking around doing technical stuff. That's why I snapped this picture. Gentleman before came up and was a Nat Geo photographer. And I love photography. I can appreciate how great it is. And he talked about his trip to North and South Korea. And he showed wonderful pictures and the dichotomy and the difference between the two, and his experience shooting those pictures. And it was really one of those sessions that probably if I hadn't gone to see Neil deGrasse Tyson, I would have missed. And I'm so thankful that I saw it. But at the end of the session, he had time because he's a photographer, not a professional presenter. And he said, so does anybody have any questions? And in my head, I could see him running through, people are going to get up and ask me about shutter speed or f-stops, or distances, or how I framed my composed the picture, right? And I could see him running through these questions in his head. But in his head, somebody walked up and they asked him this question. They said, hi, my name, and I forget his name. how can I be like you and get a job at National Geographic as a photographer? And he just stood petrified because he did not have the answer. And earlier that day, Leanne and I had been talking about careers, and I'd been kicking around an idea of this session for a long time. Because as evangelists, we walk around Dreamforce, we talk to a lot of aspiring admins, we talk to a lot of aspiring developers, and they all say, how do I get the job like you? Or how do I get this job? And it really kind of like stuck with me that we go all the way to Austin, Texas, and somebody presenting about photography gets the very same question. And so we started talking it through, and I told Leanne, I said, I think this is how that guy in the audience views the world. He views the world as a puzzle, and I think a lot of us do. And when he saw a person from National Geographic presenting and talking about being a photographer, it kind of dawned on him, oh, that guy figured out how to put the puzzle pieces together. I need to understand how to put the puzzle pieces together. And I'm guilty of asking these questions as well. How did you get to the place that you're at? Because you figured out the puzzle. So the good news is I don't think our life, I don't think our careers, and I don't think our jobs are a puzzle. I like to think of things, the click. I like to think of things as Lego blocks. Because I want you to take a second, and I want you to think about the second time you put a puzzle together. Doesn't take long, because nobody remembers the second time they put a puzzle together. Because you already put the puzzle together once. It's no fun putting it together twice. But if you're like me as a kid, I want you to think about the second time you dumped out a bag of Lego blocks. Because the first time, maybe you built a race car, and the second time you built a plane, and the third time you built a ship. And then you built a race car that flies on a ship. And you broke it all apart, and you built a house with the same Lego blocks. And it really kind of resonates to me to think about my career and your career as a bag of Lego blocks as opposed to a puzzle. Because there's no one way that we can put everything together. There's no right way to put Legos together. There's a right way to put a puzzle together, no one way to put Lego blocks together. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. I'm going to frame it in these 3 chapters. I'm going to briefly talk about the Salesforce economy because you've probably heard it. Just a refresher. I want to talk about building your skills, and then I'm going to spend a lot of time on going beyond the skills because I think there is life outside of Trailhead. Ironically, I have a Trailblazers sweater on. Okay, so let's get started with Salesforce economy. If you haven't seen this slide, I think it's amazing. First of all, if you're a Salesforce admin or a Salesforce developer, congratulations. You're in one of the top 2 jobs in the world according to Indeed.com. Do you ever think in like 3rd grade when you were in the library that you would be in a top job in the world? That's kind of amazing. So you can clap. All right. Now the good news is everything else on that slide. 3.3 million new jobs by 2022. $859 billion of impact in GDP. That's more GDP than some countries, just in this sector alone. And the thing that I like is that there's 2.5 million other Trailblazers out there. Because a lot of jobs, think of rocket scientists. How many people do they have to turn to? But they put rockets in space. We don't put rockets in space, but we have 2.5 million other friends to turn to and ask a question like, I can't get this validation field to work. Please help. And then Steve Moe answers your question for you. Okay, so the good news is you're powering the economy. You're the people that can blaze this trail to $859 billion in GDP, and you're the ones helping each other. And that's why I love this slide, because this slide, I literally know every single person on that slide. And I hope you get a chance at Dreamforce or at one of our world tour events to meet them. Personally, Zach Otero, I've had him on the podcast back when I used to have the podcast. His story is inspiring. He went from working in a cave, I kid you not, in a cave in Missouri, slicing meat, to being a Salesforce admin. He has since moved from Missouri. He now lives in Austin. has a wonderful job, bought a different house, has a life and a beautiful son. And he came up to me at a world tour and he said, "Do you know how great it is to know you can afford health insurance now?" That's pretty awesome. That's the economy that we're a part of. And it's not just administrator, it's not just developer, it's business analyst, it's technical architect, it's marketing manager, senior sales manager. I actually pulled this off of our website and I put the website at the bottom. I will also post these slides to the chatter feed, so you can do that. I appreciate you taking the pictures. I also realized that navy blue for the URL at the bottom was a horrible choice. And I'm just gonna call myself out on that. I'm also going to call out the fact that I gave this presentation at Trailhead DX earlier this year, which is our developer conference. At the end of it, we get feedback. So when you leave here, you'll be asked to give feedback. And I went through every single line of feedback in that. And the one piece of feedback that really struck me was somebody said, "This was great," and he put a slide up about all these multiple career paths, but he didn't give any specific examples. And I brought it back to the team and we had a meeting and I said, how do I work off this feedback? Because all the rest of the stuff I could incorporate. And they said, "I think you just have to talk to it." Right? I don't have specific examples for all 6 of these. And so I'm going to relate it back to racing and racing school, because this time last year I was in racing school. I'm a huge race car fan. And I thought back to what the instructors tell us. And we go through 2 days, very intense driving. And they can't simulate every single thing you'll run into on the track. It's impossible, right? That's your career. But what they can do is they can simulate enough situations so that when you're in the moment, you can think them through. And so that's how I'm internalizing that feedback. I don't have specific things for all 6 of these to tell you what to do. That to me is the puzzle piece. And we're here talking about Lego blocks. But what I want you to come out of this is I'm going to put you in enough situations. I want you to think through those situations that when you hit something that's new, it's like this, and you can think through it. So much like in the racing school, you don't go through every possible corner at every possible racetrack. But they put you through enough situations that you can imagine what it's going to be like and you know how to react. All right, so multiple career paths. Let's talk about building skills. This is the fun part. So literally right before I made this presentation back in March, this article in Fast Company came out about Kyle Walker, who interviewed at a job at Amazon that didn't exist. And you read through it and you think, what does this have to do with being a Salesforce admin? I think it has everything to do with being a Salesforce admin. Because if you look at the job market and you look at what you're interviewing for, a lot of companies don't know what they're asking for. A lot of companies want the pizza with everything on it and all the toppings because we need somebody that can do everything because we're just going to throw all that at them. But really what they're looking for is somebody that can look at the business, understand the technology, and make it sing. And oftentimes that means you're going to interview for a job that doesn't exist. So I want you to paint that picture, and we're going to get into that with Beyond the Skills. This is a great article. I also put the URL. This time I did it right in white. So 2+ points for Mike. So what I want you to do with this slide is really set the vision. We take a step back from that guy that asked the question about being a photographer. What's your vision for your career? Where do you want to go? What are you happy doing? You could be a Salesforce admin and work for a company that sells auto parts, but if you're not passionate about auto parts, then go be a Salesforce admin at a zoo if you're passionate about giraffes, right? Be that part. Set that vision for where you're going. And don't worry, it's not the next step. It may be 3 steps out. For instance, before standing on stage, I used to sell baseball caps, sweaters, and test prep. Do the math on putting me on stage here. Your next step in your career might not be that perfect job, but that's okay. That's how we build the skills. It's going to teach you something at that job, and even if you're not happy every single day, Think back to, what did I learn today at this job that's going to make me successful at the next job? I'll tell you, at some of my jobs, I learned patience. That's all we're going to say for that one. So the next one is Trailhead. And I know you're being saturated with the Trailhead message. So let me put it in perspective for you. Was anybody a Salesforce admin before 2010? A few of you in the back. How did we learn? You clicked a help link that opened up a window, yay big on your screen. And he's shaking his head. He knows what I'm talking about. And then maybe sometimes you got a PDF. That was it. Figure it out from there. So I really want to contextualize how great it is that you have something where you can read and interact and do. And even if you don't understand every part of it, it's way more interactive than just sitting down and being force-fed a PDF. So go through with an eye. Remember, we set our vision. What can I learn in Trailhead? Oh, I need to learn Service Cloud because my boss said this, right? But maybe doing a service ticket, right? There's a project where you can build a ticket. There's also a project where I think we land a thing on the moon. That's pretty fun. Take time out to have those breaks. Okay. And then the other thing, so outside of Trailhead, because I told you we're going to bounce back and forth, I feel this slide's very important. So no matter what company you're at, explore what counts at your company. And this is probably forgotten in 99% of the presentations I see, because 99% of the presentations I see, everybody tells you how to add the field to the page layout, how important it is, and where to put it on the page, because then everybody will see it, and then how to build the dashboard, and then how to send that dashboard to your executive. And what they forget to tell you is why the executive even cares about the dashboard. So 4 parts to this. 1, look at what your company mission, values, and competition are. You should have a mission statement somewhere in your company. Find it, align it to what you do in Salesforce. Then when your boss asks you for something, how does that align to our mission, to our values? 2, leadership goals and measures. I promise you, everybody that you report to has a goal and they want to help meet it. So how are you going to help empower them to meet it? Because once you do that, now they're a champion of you. Now they want to see you move up. Now they want to see Salesforce grow within your organization, and you were a part of that. You were a part of making that executive successful. I know that sounds a little kind of self-serving, but trust me, when you have an executive on your side, like it's a snowplow in front of you. And for everyone else that doesn't live in the Midwest, you know what I'm talking about. 3, how do your customers engage with you? One of the companies I worked at, I asked them, so if somebody wants to buy our product, what do they do? And I asked 4 people, and I got 4 different answers, which meant nobody knew the right answer because they didn't know how our customers engaged with us. Question that, and then think of how you can make that better. Is there a path through all the way? Has somebody thought of this path? You might be shocked. A lot of companies only have departments that think how the customer gets through that part of the department, and then we hand them off. That's like manufacturing in the 1950s. Well, anything I messed up, somebody else will fix it farther down the line. We're way past that as an organization, especially if you want to have a great customer experience. And then 4, this is probably one of the most important. How do your users succeed and get paid? Literally, how do you drive adoption? That's just a fancy way of saying it. Because if they don't find it engaging and useful to be in Salesforce, then they're not going to help you out. All right. So beyond Trailhead, this is probably my most fun slide ever. Beyond Trailhead, I want you to build fun apps to gain experience. So doing the modules is great. I want you to think of other stuff to do. And I'm going to reference back to a conversation I had with a Salesforce admin who's also from Iowa. Her name's Michelle. And she said, Mike, I got like 200 badges. What do I do now? And I said, what do you like to do? And I had to ask a few questions to get it out of her, what her hobbies were. And I said, what if you built an app in Salesforce to manage that? So, true example. I want to say it was sometime around 2012, huge winter in Iowa, because we get them. I decided to binge watch all of Top Gear. UK version, not the US version. We can discuss the differences. Most of you will agree the UK version's good. If not, thank you for giving me a 5-star rating. And I thought I should keep track of every episode I'm watching because they have like 300 episodes. And now I keep track of all the cars and the guests and the lap times, right? And so I got a Google spreadsheet and I got like 4 rows into it. And I was like, well, I could do this in Salesforce. And I spent the next 6 days not binge watching Top Gear and building a Salesforce app to manage all of the episodes I had watched in Top Gear. And I wrote a blog post about it. And then someone else in the community had a child, and they wrote a blog post about how they managed diaper changes in Salesforce. See how much fun that could be? Maybe not the diaper changing, but the sitting down thinking how data relates to each other and how data needs to flow. And then let me tell you, when you build an app and you try to run a report, you're going to find out maybe some of it's wrong. And you're not sitting down talking about accounts and contacts and opportunities and leads management cycle and quotes, right? You're talking about like babies and diapers and cars, and it's fun. So I want you to, outside of Trailhead, sit down and think, how can I build a fun app to manage my house, my kids going off to school, oil changes in my car, anything you find fun. And then I want to do other stuff. So I want you to do improv classes. Improv classes help you be extemporaneous as a speaker, help you walk into a boardroom and present, help you understand if accidentally your slides go black. What do? You keep talking. What happens if your demo fails? And how to be in front of people and be confident, because as a Salesforce admin, you're going to do a lot of presenting. I want you to go to user groups, and I want you to be curious. User groups help you introduce people. You can talk to, literally, I was at the Milwaukee user group, and I saw a lady who runs a laundry company talk to somebody who manages a garbage company, and they both figured out they use leads the same way. And it was very serendipitous. I was like, that's amazing. You would never get that just sitting at home, right? Reading a PDF. The reason I'm bringing up curious is I want you to click all the buttons, get a dev org, click things, right? Nothing's gonna break, and if it breaks, get a different one. It's okay, we got plenty of developer orgs. But I want you to try out things. I want you to see what happens when, because that's how you understand different parts of the platform. I want you to go back to your home. I want you to look up and see if the community college or technical school has a public speaking class. Then you won't say skeeking on stage. Public speaking class. To learn how, when you're on stage, you stand and present. And you be very open about it, as opposed to standing and presenting behind the theater here, because it's very interesting. All the buttons and chords they have back here. Aren't you guys fully engaged in the presentation right now? But when I stand out here, I have nothing to hide. Business writing. One of the things you're going to have to do is documentation. And if you write really well, your users might actually read it. All right, so we covered that because skills help us build our vision. Set our vision, going to help build it. The final thing beyond skills. So this one's where it gets a little fuzzy. You're going to hang with me because it's going to be amazing. I actually went to a friend's laptop, signed him out, opened up a completely empty Google browser, and I typed my name in. And I want all of you to do that when you get home. Go to the library, type your name into a Google search. I don't want you to go to your laptop and open up now and type your name in, because you're going to see all the wonderful stuff about you that Google knows. I want you to go to a friend's browser and see what Google actually knows about you. Because when you're interviewing for a job, it's a chance that maybe the recruiter or the hiring manager is going to say, they say they know Salesforce. What does the world have to say about them? What are they saying to the world? So if you see my search results, I've worked very hard on them. This is 10 years worth of being in the Salesforce economy. I have a blog, I have a Twitter. You can see my images are from Salesforce events. Everything that I put out into the world says I am a Salesforce expert, I'm a big fan of Salesforce, and I know a lot of Salesforce. So think of yourself as a brand. Do you have a logo? I used to show up to every Dreamforce in a red shirt because it was the same Twitter image that I had, and I wanted people to associate with me. I wanted people to know who I was. Do you look like your Twitter image, or is your Twitter image a cartoon character? Because if I have to look for a cartoon character at Dreamforce, I'm probably not going to find you, and you're probably not going to stand out in a crowd. And then be mindful of what you're saying. I feel like we've been talking about social for a lot, but it should really ring true at this point. You can have multiple Twitter handles and have personalities and have opinions, and I am 100% for that. The one that's for you and for your career, make sure it screams, I am about this career, and there is absolutely no reason you shouldn't have me in your organization because I'm about to affect change. Okay, so let's talk about the interview. Interviews are hard. Interviews are like slides. You can make them and then the bubble squishes down. It was really supposed to be a good-looking bubble, just kind of in the middle, hanging out. Slides aren't my thing. It's all right. So first thing, and I see this a lot, I've done hiring at Salesforce, interviews are a two-way conversation. It's not I hope I show up and I impress them and they ask me all the right questions and I really ask them the one or two things that I hope they say right. I want you to go in that interview and really look at the office around you. Look at the person you're interviewing with. Look at the people in there working. Are they happy? Are they face down in their computers? Is it an office you could work in? Is it an office you want to work in? Does the person interviewing you be like, I could talk to this person every day. They're pretty awesome. I could learn a lot from them. I want you to think of it as a two-way conversation. Too often, people think of it as a one-way conversation. I hope they like me. Great. I hope you like them, because if not, it's going to be a very short tenure while you're there. Next, at this point, research is not optional. You can't show up and have them ask you the question, so what do we do? And you say, I think you sell mortgages. You need to know their portfolio up, front to back, upside down, everything. In fact, if you know stuff that they don't know, that's great. Show interest. That's what that shows, right? Anybody could research a company. We just talked about Googling stuff. You should know them and then know how it fits in. You have a mission of somewhere to go with your career. Does working at this organization fit that mission? Because if it doesn't, you shouldn't be in the interview. Interviews are an opportunity to pitch yourself. Back to the Amazon article in Fast Company. It's an opportunity to talk about what you did. It's an opportunity to show what you can do. So let me weave the last bullet point in. Build a sample app. If I'm going to go interview with somebody, I'm going to show up with a username and login and make sure that the interviewing person or everybody I talk to has the opportunity to log in and see the sample app I built for that organization. And it's going to look amazing. Even if I don't know how they're using Salesforce, I'm going to give them a vision of what I can do for them. I'm going to show them a custom app. I'm going to show them how I do productivity, innovation, all kinds of things for that organization because I want them to see my skill. So think of it when you would be like interviewing for a chef. How many people in here would hire a chef if they never tried their food? No one. So either you didn't raise your hands or you don't care to. Either way is fine. I never would. I'd make a chef cook something for me. Cook my favorite dish. Here's my favorite dish, macaroni and cheese. And I'm going to hire the chef that makes the macaroni and cheese I like. I would never hire a chef that doesn't ever serve me any food. So why would you hire a Salesforce admin or a developer who you've never seen their work? This is an opportunity to stand out. Out of the 5 admins that they interview, you're the only one that shows sample work. You already are ahead of the line, in my opinion. Okay, so let's be very tactical as we kind of wrap this session up. What can you do at Dreamforce 18 to navigate your career? The first thing is the heart at the top. I want you to think about what you love and where you want to go. And I want you to use that as your guide throughout Dreamforce. I want you to ask people why they do their jobs, not how they do their jobs. I can ask anybody how they do their job, and it's going to sound kind of the same as everyone else. I could ask somebody who's a top marketer, how do you do your job? And it's going to sound kind of the same as everybody else in marketing. I want to know why they do their job. I want to know why they do that, because that's going to help guide me as to why I should be in that position. Does that fit my mission and goal? And then I want you to realize, much like the arrows at the bottom, your path, like everyone else in this room, is going to be very different. I started off in retail. I sold hats. I sold high-end men's sweaters. So what did I learn about that? I learned how to be very approachable. I learned how to talk to people because I had to talk to multiple people per hour to sell something. And of all the personalities I talked to, I had to fit about 97% of them or I wasn't going to make my goal. So you learn how to talk to people, how to get information out of them. And then I sold test prep books to teachers. I was the youngest person at the organization to ever sell test prep books. And I had to walk into a school auditorium and present to 200 teachers who immediately with their eyes told me, who's this kid? He doesn't know anything. I've been a teacher for how long? He's going to talk to me about my kids? Nope. I'm going to have fun with him. That was the only way I could sell test prep books. Had fun. I made it unlike all the other presentations they had to watch that day. We had fun, we joked, I hand out cupcakes. And I sold the most test prep of any other salesperson at that organization because I'd taken the skills from retail and moved it over. Now I do the same thing. So that's how you have to navigate your career. I took building blocks from every different part of my career and built different skills. And then when I needed to go to a different job, I just reconfigured them. Okay, remember we talked about how we're gonna move forward. I put together a Trailhead, trail mix for you. And these are the three that I really wanna call out because they really don't have anything to do with building apps in Salesforce. And I really love that Trailhead is beyond kind of like the fingers on keyboard stuff. And the first one is the Build Your Career in the Salesforce ecosystem. I think it has a lot of really good information. The middle one to me, like I wish I kind of almost sign up for multiple accounts on Trailhead just to keep retaking it because it's so super value, the Drucker School, the way that Peter Drucker puts things together. And it really teaches you about gathering requirements, how to understand what executives, what businesses are asking for, and then how to translate that. I feel like that's a huge gap in the ecosystem right now. A lot of people know how to create a field. They just don't know how to take the requirements and translate that to, it doesn't need to be a field, it needs to be a custom object. And that's what that Drucker School does for you. And then the third one is really rock your future. I like to think farther ahead as you're doing Trailhead stuff. I think that's very important on top of just building your skills. So, to recap, at the end when you walk out and you're super tired and you're getting a cup of coffee, I want you to think about Lego blocks, not puzzle pieces. Because throughout your career, you've been accumulating different Lego blocks and you can put them together. You just need to know when and you need to know how to put them back together again and build what you want that fits your mission. And then most importantly, I think it's very, very good for us to know, it's not about how many Lego blocks you have, it's about how you use those Lego blocks. So with that, I'm going to give you enough time to get to your session. I will also be around for questions. Thank you very much.